In the first war ever fought with machines, there was a battle where no guns were fired, not because the soldiers were too afraid, but because silence was the weapon. Imagine an entire battlefield where the enemy is only feet away, where every breath could betray you, where the slightest sound could mean death. And yet the war still raged. Most people picture the First World War as a war of noise, artillery, machine guns, explosions that shook the earth. But there was a battle, hidden in the shadows of that noise, that was fought in complete silence. A battle so strange, so intense, that it almost sounds like a myth. But it wasn't. The Western Front was a place of constant sound. The earth trembled under shell fire. Men shouted. Planes screamed overhead. The air itself was full of death. Yet in the midst of this chaos, a small pocket of silence emerged, because the soldiers realized something terrifying. Sound was not just noise. It was a warning system. During the Battle of the Somme, 1916, a new kind of warfare emerged. Not the thunder of artillery, not the roar of machine guns, a silent battle. Some historians call it the trench raid, but honestly, the truth is more chilling. It was a war within the war. A battle fought in the dark, with no noise and no mercy. The rules were simple. No shouting, no whistles, no signalling, no guns, no explosions, only knives, bayonets, and bare hands. Because the moment you fired a gun, you alerted the entire trench line, and that meant you were dead. Trench raiding was a practice born from desperation. It was an attempt to gain advantage without risking a full assault. Soldiers would creep across no man's land, in the dark, with no light, with no sound. They would crawl like ghosts. And when they reached the enemy trench, they would strike, not with bullets, but with silent death. Silence wasn't just a tactic, it was a psychological weapon. The enemy didn't know if they were being watched or if they were already dead. Every movement was suspicious, every breath was a threat. And the worst part? The silent battle could happen anywhere, in the middle of the night, or even in broad daylight, if the attackers moved fast enough. They were not fighting soldiers, they were fighting shadows. There was one night in particular that became the stuff of legend. The night when a raid turned into a nightmare. Soldiers crossed no man's land, quietly, carefully, like hunters. Then the enemy realized something. They were not alone, and they began to fight back without making a sound. They didn't scream, they didn't shout. They used their knives, their hands, their teeth, because silence was the only advantage. Imagine being in that trench, hearing nothing, seeing nothing, but knowing someone is there. And then you feel it, a hand on your shoulder, a knife in your ribs, a breath on your neck. No explosions, no warning, just death. That was the silent battle. Silence worked because it removed the advantage of sound. In a loud battlefield, noise gave away positions. But in silence, you couldn't tell where the enemy was. No gunfire, no whistles, no artillery, only the quiet. And you know, the quiet was the most terrifying weapon of all. When the raids ended, the survivors were changed, not just physically, but mentally. Many soldiers developed what we now call PTSD, but at the time they called it something else. Shell shock, and the silent battle was one of the worst causes, because the mind can endure noise. But silence is a different kind of terror. Here's the twist. The silence didn't just belong to the soldiers, it belonged to the battlefield itself, because the true reason the raids existed was not just to kill, it was to gather information, to learn what the enemy was planning, to steal supplies, to destroy communications, to break the enemy's confidence, without even firing a shot. That's the real secret of the silent battle. It wasn't about winning the war, it was about surviving it. The silent battles of the First World War were never celebrated. They were never glorified. They didn't make headlines, but they changed the nature of warfare, because they proved something terrifying. That war is not always fought with guns. Sometimes war is fought with fear, and fear can be silent. So the next time you think of the First World War, remember the noise, the artillery, the machine guns, the explosions, but also remember the silence, the battle that wasn't heard but was felt, and the men who fought without ever making a sound.